First thing I want to talk about is abortion. Abortion in Texas. So, Texas is one of 33 states to outlaw abortion very shortly after Roe v. Wade was overturned about a year and a half ago, for those of you who don't remember. And Texas has some of the most restrictive anti-abortion laws in place in the nation, essentially. There are no exceptions for rape, for incest, or for the life of the mother in Texas. If you get pregnant, that's it. No excuses whatsoever. Technically, according to the law, there's supposed to be exceptions for rape and incest and the life of the mother. Except in real life, doctors are too scared because there's no standards. So we keep hearing stories over and over and over again about how doctors who are just too frightened of going to prison. So what'll happen is that you'll have a woman who has her life is threatened. You know, the baby's dead. What do you call that? Entropic pregnancy or something like that. Endemic pregnancy. I can't remember the term exactly. But basically the fetus is dead and they need to have an abortion. And the doctors will just refuse to do so because the way the law is written, they can go to prison. And this is happening over and over and over, and we're getting story after story after story about women who are basically almost killed because doctors will not act. Or they have irreversible damage, or they're rendered sterile, or something like that, because the doctors are refusing to act, because the law is written in such a way as even if the mother's life is in danger, they could still go to prison. And you can't blame the doctors, because doctors are just doctors. They're not activists. And they have to follow the law. I'm sure there's some doctors out there who will just do the right thing no matter what and take that risk. That's great, that's commendable, but you can't expect every doctor to do that. You know, doctors are just human beings. They don't want to go to prison. So if you want to blame anybody, you should be blaming Republicans for this. Apparently that's not good enough, because what's going on is that in the states around Texas, where it is still legal, abortions have increased by a factor of 4. Right? So what's going on is that, well, people are leaving the state to go get abortions, which is 100% legal. Now, there are actual states trying to pass laws saying that it's illegal to go from one state to another in order to get an abortion. We've seen legislation pop up in Tennessee, states around Florida, because Florida actually is one of the few states in the Deep South where you are still able to get an abortion. Up to 15 weeks, I believe, in Florida. Although they're trying to shorten that down to 6 weeks. But currently, right now, it's 15 weeks. Florida has also experienced an increase in abortions, and several states are trying to pass laws saying that, no, you're not allowed to go to Florida now to get abortions. Same kind of thing, they're trying to do that in Texas. Those laws are unconstitutional, and they'll never hold up, even under the restrictive, reactionary, super conservative Supreme Court that we have now. They know that those laws aren't going to hold up, because it's explicitly written in the Constitution that you're not allowed to do that. Long story short, you have what's called the Commerce Clause, where one state's laws cannot override another state's laws when it comes to commerce. And so getting an abortion is, since it costs money, it's commerce, which is kind of bullshit. It should be a medical treatment. And if it was considered a medical treatment, then you wouldn't have this problem. It should be in the Constitution to say that you can go to any state to get a medical treatment, but it's not. There is no law that says that. So this is the law that actually covers that, is the Commerce Clause. But long story short, that says you're not allowed to outlaw something in another state. So for example, if I live in California and I wanted to outlaw prostitution, that's fine. Or gambling is another example, that's fine. But then if somebody decides that they want to go to Nevada and go gamble, then it's not lawful for me to then arrest them on their way to Nevada, or arrest them as they come back from Nevada, because they didn't break any laws. They didn't break any laws in Nevada. They didn't break any laws in California. That's how it works. Same thing should apply towards abortion, right? The conservatives know this, of course. They know this, and so now they're trying to do everything they can. The insane anti-abortion religious fascists conservatives, excuse me. I want to make sure I'm correct there. Trying to do everything they can to prevent women from going to other states in order to get abortions, because, just controlling them in their own state and actually leaving it up to states' rights, I guess that's not good enough, right? That still allows too much freedom for women. Now there's a couple of laws in certain districts and towns in Texas which are targeting what they call abortion trafficking. And I want to read this article for you because abortion trafficking is a unique take. A very much full of shit take. Ridiculous doublespeak bullshit that I think everybody should be aware of, because if you care about abortion, these kinds of things, you should be aware of them to make sure that they don't try to pull this bullshit in your state. So let me go ahead and turn on this laptop thing here. Let me just make this guy bigger. This is from 25 ABC, connecting Central Texas. Texas activists seek trafficking laws to halt abortion travel. Ordinances that would prevent driving through a city or country for the purpose of obtaining an abortion are being proposed in several Texas towns. Anti-abortion activists are exploring abortion trafficking as a means to create laws that would make it illegal to transport someone on specific roads to get an abortion. It gets funkier, folks. Propose new laws that would prohibit driving through the city or county for the sole purpose of obtaining an abortion are currently under consideration in some towns in Central Texas. Llano, a town in Texas Hill County with over 3,300 residents, discussed such a measure in late August, as the Washington Post first reported. They aim to stop individuals from traveling from Austin to Round Rock using their highways to reach states where abortion services were available, such as New Mexico. This is really building a wall to stop abortion trafficking. Right to Life East Texas Director Mark Lee Dixon, an anti-abortion activist behind the effort, told the Post, accusing those who travel out of Texas to obtain abortions as traffickers because the unborn child is always taken against their will. During a town hall, Dixon told Llano residents that a baby-murdering cartel was targeting pregnant women in Central Texas and taking them by trains, planes, and automobiles. To the Washington Post reported, I say we end abortion trafficking in the state of Texas, said Dixon. 4 out of the 5 members of Llano State City Council voted to postpone the ordinance to a later date. So I just want to kind of point out a couple of things here. First off, you notice that he specifically chose the language abortion trafficking. Why did he say abortion trafficking? Because there is no actual person involved in the trafficking, right? This is a person going of their free will. See, when you say trafficking, that means somebody, that makes it sound like somebody's being kidnapped. Someone's being abducted and being drawn out of the state for bad, nefarious reasons. Usually, when you say human trafficking, it's for sexual exploitation. Something like that. And he's using that verbiage because the human trafficking thing is becoming very popular on the right wing as something to blame on leftists and Democrats. Why is that? Because of QAnon. Because the whole thing behind QAnon is that Democrats and leftists, specifically Democrats, people like Hillary Clinton and Huba Ahmadine, Nancy Pelosi, and those kinds of people, and Joe Biden, specifically Democrats are kidnapping children and having weird sex parties with them and then ripping off their faces and drinking their blood and sucking out their adrenochrome from their brains and shit. That's what he's... So this guy here is leveraging that. This guy here is basically, he said sex trafficking. You know, he said abortion trafficking because it sounds like sex trafficking. And because that's a hot topic on the far fringe, insane, conservative Christian right. They think that they're fighting God's battle against sex traffickers to save the little babies and stuff. And that's why you have to outlaw abortion. And that's why you have to end trans rights and stuff like that. So that's the first thing there. Second thing, he said here, a cartel. I want to say the exact words. A baby murdering cartel was targeting pregnant women in Central Texas and taking them by trains, planes, and automobiles. That is an actual title of a movie, by the way. Trains, Planes, and Automobiles with Steve Martin in the 80s. I don't know if that has anything to do with this. I don't know why he chose that wording specifically. Bet you $1 million this guy is old and has probably seen that movie. But anyway, when you say baby murdering cartel, that makes it sound like that there's a pregnant woman and armed people are kidnapping the pregnant woman, hiding her in a car, driving her across the border, and forcing her to get an abortion. That's what it sounds like. Baby murdering cartel targeting pregnant women. First off, if that was even a thing, like, why the fuck would somebody kidnap a woman and force her to get an abortion? That's not how it works. Some people from Planned Parenthood are showing up and putting a gun to her head and are like, you will get an abortion. Like, no, that's not a thing. That's not what's happening at all. Secondly, if you were going to do that, why would you then smuggle them across the state line in order to make the abortion legal? Like, if that was your nefarious plot, if that was your nefarious baby stealing satanic plot there, and you needed to get these fresh fetal stem cells for your next QAnon ritual to Satan or whatever, if that's what you really needed to do, then why would you have to go across into New Mexico to get an abortion? Why not just do it in a back alley someplace? Right? It doesn't make any sense. And it's because he's using this loaded language on purpose. And it's a good sign of how ridiculously, idiotically right-wing these people have pushed the Overton window. You know, if I would have heard some shit like this in the 90s, like when I was in high school or something, people would have laughed this out of the... Like, it would have been, like, laughed off of the news. God, these people are kooks. This would be under, like, the weird news section. Occasionally you hear things like, oh, these are strange laws that you have around the country. Like, oh, in Massachusetts you have to have somebody with a lantern has to be walking at the end if you ride your horse in the middle of the night. Shit like that, you know what I mean? And if you're in... somebody in Vermont is not allowed to grow peppers in the month of November. Like that kind of thing. Like you see these... it would be in a segment like that where people would say weird, wacky laws, you know. And in Texas, you're not allowed to drive through this town in order to go to New Mexico to get an abortion. Like, that's where it would be, because it's so fucking ridiculous, right? So that's the first thing I want to mention. Second thing, how exactly would you be able to tell somebody was going across state lines to get an abortion? How would you know? So there's a woman and somebody driving her, either another person. I don't know why the woman can't drive herself. Maybe they're saying, oh, if she's like a teenager or some shit. Maybe you have like a 13-year-old girl and you're just driving and a cop pulls you over. How's the cop supposed to determine if the girl is pregnant? Is he going to make her take a pregnancy test? Like, is that what it is now? Like the same way that they can make you like take a drunk driving test, you know, a breathalyzer? Are they now going to be like, okay, well, now your 13-year-old daughter has to take a pregnancy test? Is that what's going to happen? What if she is pregnant? How are they supposed to know exactly what you intend to do? Like, are they just going to arrest you preemptively? Are they going to fine you just for driving while pregnant? Is that what's going to happen? It's the dumbest, ridiculous shit ever. It would never stand up in fucking court. I don't even think, like, our The Supreme Court now, the Supreme Court, which overturned Roe v. Wade, I don't even think they're crazy enough to uphold this. Or maybe Amy Coney Barrett would do it. But I don't even think the other conservative justices would go for this, because this is like beyond wacky. Like, think about all the shit that this opens up to. That we can just arrest you because we think you're going someplace to do something with no evidence whatsoever. Well, that means the cops could just arrest you for any reason. Well, hey, we think you're going to murder somebody. We think you're going to deal some drugs. You know, you have no evidence for that, right? Like, you know, we think you're going to go kill the president. That's what we think. We think you're going to go, like, drop a bomb and blow up Mount Rushmore. That's what we think you're going to do. We have no evidence of it, but you were driving through this town. And there's a town ordinance that says it's illegal to drive through this town to go blow up Mount Rushmore. Like, it's the dumbest fucking shit ever. It makes no sense. And the thing is, the shit's passing. So here, let's go on here. So let's read a little bit more here. Dixon informs Scripps News that 71 political subdivisions across the U.S. have passed sanctuary cities for the unborn initiative ordinances, 52 of which are in Texas. Not sure what that means. I'll have to look that up. Sanctuary cities for the unborn, no idea. Dixon, along with attorney Jonathan Mitchell, the former Texas Solicitor General, responsible for authoring the Heartbeat Bill that played a key role in the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. So now you see who this asshole is. Now you see who this guy is. Now he's one of the authors, one of the reasons why abortion got overturned in the fucking first place. And apparently, the argument that they had to make it back to to return it to the states' rights just isn't good enough anymore. I mean, if you believed that, folks, if you're one of the people out there that actually believed that Republicans and conservatives wanted to make abortion part of states' rights, that every state should decide themselves, and that they weren't going to try to restrict it on a national level, if you actually believe that, then you're a moron. You're an idiot and you should feel bad. Right? Because it's obvious from day one that their plan is to outlaw it on a national scale and turn women into fucking broodmares. That has always been their plan. Dixon noted that the ordinances that specifically prohibit abortion trafficking have passed in the cities of Odessa, Little River Academy, as well as Mitchell and Goliad counties. So it's not that these are being proposed. Is that how many counties is that right now? Four counties now could conceivably pull you over and arrest you for driving while pregnant. Let's read a little bit more. Performing an abortion is now a first-degree felony in the state following the Supreme Court's overturn of Roe v. Wade last year. There are no exceptions for rape or incest, and people can sue providers or anyone assisting patients seeking an abortion after about 6 weeks of pregnancy. Let's turn this off here. That's something that we also cannot forget, is that it is legal in Texas to sue someone who gets an abortion. And not just the person who gets the abortion, but anybody who helps. So I'm not sure how the fuck that works out. And here's the thing about that, right? That sounds ridiculous as hell too. I mean, I'm sure you guys remember, I did a whole stream on this shit when that passed. That was in 2021, I think. It was super controversial. And the Supreme Court let it stand. That is technically the law now in Texas. Now, I don't know if anybody's actually been sued under this law. It kind of sounds to me that law and these sort of town ordinances are just there to scare people. But you don't pass a law without the intent of enforcing it, right? It does kind of sound like somebody would be like, they're just sort of there to scare people, so they go, oh, well, we better not go through here or whatever, blah, 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 blah. But laws don't get on the books unless you intend to enforce them. And I'm pretty sure this asshole Dixon very well wants this law to be enforced, as well as the sue somebody for getting an abortion law. And let's not forget that. Like, that's the thing in Texas. You can get sued just for providing material aid to someone who gets an abortion. It doesn't say someone who gets an abortion inside of Texas. It just says someone who gets an abortion. So if you leave the state, get an abortion, and come back, can you sue them? And let's say for an example, that let's say you got your girlfriend pregnant, and she doesn't want to keep the baby. She leaves, and you guys break up for whatever dumbass reason, right? Because you're an insane conservative Christian and you want to keep the child and she doesn't. She leaves, she goes, gets an abortion. She goes to New Mexico, she gets an abortion. You could sue her then and say, hey, she got an abortion. I knew that she was pregnant. She terminated that pregnancy in another state. That's the law in Texas. You can sue her. You can sue her mother. You can sue everybody who knew and didn't say anything. You can sue the... You can't... Well, I guess you can't sue the doctors. They're in another state. You could try to sue the doctors. It's not going to work. You can sue the person who drove her there. You can sue the taco place that they stopped to get lunch at on the way there. You can sue all of them for $10,000 each. That's the law in Texas right now. Right? The Supreme Court let that stand. So even though this law sounds ridiculous and, you know, in no sane world will it stand. And personally, I don't think they would let it stand. I mean, I don't know. They let this other ridiculous fucking law stand. So who's to say that they won't let this law stand? I mean, what are they supposed to do here? Like, what's the goal? Like, just adding more restrictive laws on being a woman is what this is. Right? It's, I mean, are they just going to, like, test every single woman who gets pregnant? Like, are you going to have to, like, do a monthly pregnancy test and then turn that into the government just so that they know if you're pregnant or not? And then if you do get pregnant, what are they going to do? Are they going to put fucking ankle monitors on you? Is that what it is? Just every single woman in Texas has a fucking ankle monitor, like, at all times, so that they know where they are, they know where they're going, and they have to, like, turn in the fucking pregnancy test every 30 days? How can anybody support this shit? And here's the thing that gets me about all this, folks. Your average conservative person will tell you that they think the government overreaches. And the one thing that they really hate about Democrats, specifically when they'll say Democrats, is their support for quote-unquote big government. And you ask them, well, what does big government mean? And they'll say, well, all these things that government is not supposed to do. And then they'll start rattling off a bunch of shit that government is actually supposed to do. Like, regulate things, raise taxes, like, educate people, shit like that. They'll start listing all this crap, right? And why do they list all this stuff anyway? It's because they don't want to pay taxes. That's why. So the excuse they always say is big government. Government should be reduced to the size of a baby, and then you can drown it in a bathtub, shit like that. How many times have you heard this fucking stupid shit from Republicans, right? The same story over and over and over and over. But when it actually comes to quote-unquote big government actually imposing its will on people, they're all for it as long as the government does what they want, as long as it imposes their will on people. So they don't give a fuck, you know, when it comes to regulations and stuff and making sure people, like, don't spew toxic shit into the atmosphere and, like, pollute and all this other crap and anything that may, like, prevent their corporation from making money. Like, they don't care about any of that shit. But when it comes to deciding if the state can force you to have a child, they're all for it. And it's because they're Republicans and conservatives, they're fucking hypocrites. They don't actually give a fuck about any of that stuff. All they care about is enforcing their will on the rest of us. Because that's what fascists are. This is what fascism looks like. Right here. Let's not forget that, folks. Fascism, when it arrives in the United States, it didn't come with goose-stepping soldiers. It comes waving a flag and a Bible.
Hello folks, if you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please consider buying something from my Etsy shop, supporting me on Patreon, liking and subscribing, and checking me out across my social media links listed below. Thank you all so much, and see you next time.